here to get going. All right, so our recording feature is on. So I want to welcome everybody with us on the internet and welcome everybody with us here in Brainerd to our cattlemen's meeting done jointly with MSCA and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the MPCA, today. It will be recorded, so everybody is aware of that. You may also chat in questions to us if you didn't hear that already. We're going to go around and do a quick introduction of who is with us in Brainerd. We're not going to be able to do that with all the folks out in WebEx world, but welcome. My name is Samantha Adams. I work here at the Brainerd office with the MPCA. Darren, would you start us off?
Darren Willing, Morrison County.
Amy Zimmerman, Wadena County.
And when they say Wadena County and Morrison County, they mean a county feedlot officer from Morrison County and Wadena County.
Barry Ballman, Polk County Land and Resource, and I also assist Swift County with their feedlot program.
Ed Yulicki, I'm Ted County Feedlot Officer.
Jessica Moore, PCA, I'm working in Brainerd with the feedlot program.
I'm Kim Bernaldson. I'm the lead engineer and the rule coordinator for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency feedlot program. Allison Reamer, I'm with the PCA in St. Paul with the feedlot program. And then I'm Kim, PCA.
Molly Costin, I'm in the DL office with Feedlot.
Marissa Spencer, state agronomist for NRCS in St. Paul.
Brian Gelman, State Resource Conservation with NRCS in St. Paul.
Evan Ingebrigtsen, technician for Cass and Crow Wing counties with NRCS.
And Bertha Roseanne Coffey, we're producers in Crow Wing County.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you. We're going to get going. Our guests here. Okay. Our guests here have clickers in their hands, and so we're going to go through our PowerPoint. It says, welcome agricultural producers, and we're going to collect a little bit of demographic information about who is with us today. We're going to use the clickers, as we commonly refer to them. They're also known as turning point technologies or responseware. If you look at the clicker in front of you, you can see it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on it, or A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So when a question comes up, you get to select your answer. The last button you push is the answer that it will take. And so this is also to help you get familiar with the clickers. So we'll get going here. All information is anonymous. We haven't tied anything on your clicker to your name or who you are. So the first question is, we're going to have to close the chat box. Apologize, folks. Because we can't see the whole question. All right, so which category do you belong to? Are you a cow-calf producer? You deal in backgrounders, finishing off beef cattle, dairy cows, other ag, or you belong to agency, local, county, government, or other state agency?
Federal agency.
It says agency, so federal agency will include that. Maybe we'll update that prior to the Rochester meeting. So if we do have some federal agencies, we can include those. The first time we use these, it also helps me get kind of an idea of how many clickers we have out there in the audience, so we can make sure that I wait long enough for everybody to get their answer in for future questions. So you can see we've got 13 responses, and it says polling open. And when I click that button, we have polling closed. Yeah, you guys feel outnumbered. Sorry about that. You can see that we've got a lot of governmental folks here, which is okay, because this is also a training opportunity for them to learn a lot about permitting, but it's also something, we got a cow-calf and some dairy producers here as well. So that's all right. We're still going to have a good time today. The next one, this is our animal units, and the reason why we have an animal unit indicator up here is to help you get an idea for the next questions we're going to ask. So if you got mature cows, they're about a 1.4 animal unit. That's about 1 animal unit for every 1,000 pounds of critter is the best way to think about it when you're looking at our animal unit calculations. So our next question actually asks you, it says, if you're a beef producer, what size category do you fall into? And so you can pick any of the categories above. So if you're 0 to 99, you'd push A, 100 to 299, you'd push B. You kind of get the gist of it if you are an agricultural producer. So you can see most of our producers here today fall below the 300 animal unit mark, which is okay, but that'll be helpful when we get to the permitting world, and you can kind of gauge what permits might be applicable for you or for your operation. If you're a dairy producer, we're just asking, we separated these two out. Same question, what size category do you fall into? Are you in that 0 to 99, 100 to 299? And these reiterate, follow along the lines of our registration kind of requirements, our permitting requirements. That's why I broke them apart into these categories. And again, we're below the bigger thresholds. Okay, so the other question is, how did you hear about this meeting? Did you hear about it through the Cattlemen's Association, their newsletter, from the Feedlot newsletter? We do have a very large email group that we send out information monthly, I believe Forrest sends out on our Feedlot newsletter from a friend, other cattleman member, PCA staff person, other governmental unit, or some other publication, because I have heard that there's been a lot of the farmer publications that ran an article about these meetings that we're holding across the state. And we have already held one in Wilmer, one in Marshall, one in Detroit Lakes, now this one in Brainerd, and there'll be one more in Rochester. So we've got quite a smattering here. We've got some MPCA staff people, governmental unit, Feedlot newsletter. Hey, that's awesome. Forrest, hopefully you hear this out there. You got one Feedlot newsletter. And some the Cattlemen's newsletter as well. Okay, and what would you like to learn about most today? The permitting information, pasturing in various settings, who do I talk to about expanding my farm, or some other piece of information? All right, so mostly permitting, which is kind of exciting because that's the bulk of our conversation today. We're going to cover a lot of information about that. Some pasturing questions and some other that's not included above here. And as we mentioned to the group here before we started, that the folks here in Brainerd will have an opportunity after the meeting to ask any one-on-one questions that they might have that they want to talk to staff about. And those of you out in our WebEx world will have an opportunity. Feel free to call us, and we'll be happy to answer any one-on-one questions you might have, or chat us, and I'll periodically try to check our chat messages so we can answer those questions from the folks on the internet. All right, that's all it is for demographics. Pretty quick presentation to start the day off with. Our next presenter is going to be Molly Costin. She's out of our Detroit Lakes office, and she's actually going to do our permitting presentation and kick us off with kind of the heavy meat of the day, so to speak. So I'm going to switch us over.
Compliments of the Bluffton Parade. You all have 50 rolls in front of you. I apologize to the people online. You're not able to partake in that. They're pretty delicious. For people who are interacting with me during the presentation, you may receive one flying at your head in the middle, or also anyone that I see napping or mouthing off. You may also get one flying at you, so just so you're aware of that. I am the pitcher for our office softball team, so I do all right. As Sam said, my name is Molly. I work in the DL office, and I'm going to be doing the presentation on permitting today. There we go. Outline of kind of what we're going to be talking about. The thresholds that you'll be dealing with for permitting, animal numbers that you have to be aware of. Permit types. Primarily covering the NPDS permit, but we'll also talk about the construction short form permit and the interim permit that we have. the permit application and components, what makes up the application, that sort of thing. And then also tips for a complete application, things that we've noticed as staff members that we might be able to help you guys with if you're looking to turn in an application. And then other considerations such as environmental assessment worksheets or multi-site permitting. So getting started, as far as feedlot permitting thresholds go, we're working with the state animal units and also the federal animal numbers. For owners that are looking to construct or expand, your first step is knowing whether you're at those state animal numbers or the federal number thresholds. They're critical in determining what type of permit you will need at your facility. So for the state animal numbers, the state of Minnesota uses animal units or AUs to determine permit types, environmental review, manure management requirements, etc. Local units of government, your local CFOs, may do the same. It's an important number. You have to represent it accurately. You have to know what numbers you're looking at for your facility before you apply for a permit. Also for putting on your registration forms or any county documents, that sort of a thing. Animal units, or AUs, are a unit of measure that are used to compare the difference in the production of animal manure for an animal feedlot or manure storage area. Your total animal units on site is found out by multiplying the number of animals that you have by the animal unit factor that's associated with that type of animal. You can see it here on the form, on quite a few different forms that we have. Be sure you're using the correct animal unit for each animal. These lists are available in multiple places. If you need a copy of them, be sure to let us know. But AU is based on the size, as Sam said before, and the weight of the animal at the time that they leave your site. And those of you that are here at the meeting, that is included in your packet there if you're looking for it. All right, for permitting, there are a few different important thresholds that you need to remember. For 300 or more, for permitting, construction or expansion over 300 requires a state permit, and permits can either be issued by the PCA or by your county folks. And also for 1,000 or greater, construction or expansion by this amount requires a state and or federal permit. So something to keep in mind. Some other requirements that we have: if you're over 100 AUs, land application of manure record keeping and nutrient sampling are required. And if you're over 300, then you're looking at a manure management plan as required. So those are just some of the thresholds that we have to keep in mind. Then we're going to look at the federal animal number thresholds here. In addition to the AUs that we just talked about, there's also federal US EPA large CAFO animal number thresholds that you need to keep in mind. Some of those are, if you have veal calves, 1,000 of them on site, and you're considered a large CAFO. For beef cattle, it's also 1,000 head. Mature dairy, 700 or more, and then other cattle, which could include heifers, steers, bulls, 1,000 or more, and you will hit that large CAFO threshold. And that's based on the number of head on the facility, not the animal units, just to be clear. Move the next slide. It compares the two. So if you're comparing the large CAFO thresholds with the animal unit thresholds, you can look there in the middle. It tells you the number of head, and on the right, it tells you the AU total for that head. So for veal calves, although you'll hit the large CAFO threshold at 1,000 veal calves, your AU is still only 200 animal units on site. So I'm not going to read them all off. You guys can look through them there for a second. All right. Any questions so far on that? So if your facility meets one or both of the thresholds that we just talked about, either the EPA's large CAFO threshold or the Minnesota 1,000 animal unit threshold, then you're required to have a state or federal permit to construct, expand, or to operate your feedlot. So that's why those two different thresholds are important. When you are looking at permitting, be sure that you are planning for any expansions in the future as well. Knowing that a permit is required at some point during the expansion of your facility, make sure that you plan for the future, for future permitting requirements. Consider the upgrades that you might require on site if you're not doing them all at this time. If you have something planned for the future, keep that into consideration when you're looking at your permit. Also think about the entire site, not just your feedlot. Consider that areas that were historically not a pollution concern may need to be addressed under a permit. Those things can change. So, and also to incorporate permit requirements with your overall business planning. It's good practice to make sure that you're speaking with your PCA staff or consultant, whomever, to be sure that you understand what road you're going to take. All right, so that was thresholds. We're going to go through permit types at this point, and we're basically going to be talking about the NPDES/SDS permit, but we'll go over a few other ones as well. Permit types, the NPDES/SDS, feedlots that fall into either the US EPA's large CAFO definition and or Minnesota's 1,000 AU threshold must have either a joint NPDES, which stands for National Pollution Discharge Elimination System / State Disposal System. I'm just going to refer to it as the NPDES permit from now on. There's a general or an individual under the NPDES permit, or there's also the State Disposal System permit, SDS permit. There's a general or an individual under that as well. For large CAFOs that are zero discharge, the NPDES, SDS, and regular SDS permits are optional. So before we get too many questions about that, I'm going to give you the definition of zero discharge here. Zero discharge, where no pollutants from manure or processed wastewater generated in a barn, open lot, manure feed storage area enter into water of the U.S. So that's how you get to that zero discharge standard. The exception is when an overflow occurs from a feedlot that's designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to contain all the manure and processed wastewater and runoff from a 24-year, 24-hour rainfall event. That's the worst storm we've seen in 25 years that can happen in 24 hours. So that's the exception to that rule. Operation and maintenance of those are verified by routine visual inspections, use of depth markers for liquid impoundments, mortality handling, and record keeping. Any questions on that?
Molly?
Yes.
Maybe you can repeat the question. With those records that are required, if I just know them in my head, is that good enough?
Sam asked the question, the records that are required for that, is it okay if you just know them in your head? No, you're supposed to keep record of them on site. So you may know that it's doing all right out there, but the records are required. For all other feedlots, we have construction short form and interim permits. The construction short form permit is for construction or expansion of a site that's over 300 animal units. Interim permit is used for construction or expansion while correcting a pollution hazard if you're over 50 animal units. So they have different uses there. We're going to look at the differences between the two. I know this is kind of an overwhelming slide, but we'll try to get through them here. For the construction short form permit, which is in the middle there in the blue, facility size will be between 300 and animal units, 300 animal units, and either the EPA, that large CAFO, or the 1,000 animal unit threshold. So you're between 300 and 1,000. For the interim permit, you're between 50 and that large CAFO and or 1,000 animal unit threshold. So they're slightly different there. The purpose of the construction short form permit is for new construction or expansion with no potential pollution hazard. And then the difference between that and the interim is for correction of a pollution hazard for a feedlot or manure storage area, and it includes a schedule of compliance in the permit. The manure management plans for the construction short form and interim submit with the permit as requested, and for interim it is if you are over 100 AU, submit with the application and or written into the permit. Notice requirements, both of them require notice of construction and or a public notice with them. The duration of both is less than 24 months, and both can receive an extension. The construction short form permit is for less than 24 months if you write in and request it before 90 days before prior to expiration. and the interim permit is for less than 90 days with the written request as well. Stocking and expansion with a construction short form permit, as soon as you receive that permit, you're allowed to stock or expand. With the interim permit, it is after the pollution hazard is corrected on site. Both of these types of inspections require, or permits, excuse me, require inspections before, during, and after the issuance of the permit.
Molly?
Yeah.
Can we take a break? I think we have a couple, chat questions that came in.
Perfect.
And we'll just read those off so everybody can see them as well. Take a little second, see what they're asking us out in the country here.
Okay, from Wade, we have, can you expand on may not have historically been considered a pollution problem for permitting thresholds? If you're looking at somebody who is required to have an NPDES permit, there are slightly different requirements for whether they can have runoff leaving the lot or leaving the facility. So that would be, if it wasn't an issue before, if they're at the county thresholds, but they're moving to the state thresholds, they're now required to have an NPDES permit. That could change based on the site. It's very site by site as well. Hopefully that answered your question, Wade. Anybody else want to expand on that one?
I would offer a thought that maybe if you have like a filter strip you're currently utilizing to treat runoff on a site that's not a CAFO, that when you become a CAFO, which means you're exceeding that EPA threshold or the 1,000 animal units, that would change. You can't have a filter strip, you'd have to collect it. So that would be one of the situations where something that's not a pollution hazard becomes something that you have to address when you step over that next growth line.
And I would add for either lot or their feed storage.
You want to come up and?
Yeah, I guess I would just add to Sam's comment that not only your feedlot that would go to a filter strip, but your your feed storage areas as well. That comes into play.
Thank you, ladies. Also, we had another question that said that Molly had stated when you fill out your application that a person is to place the animals in the size that they leave the facility. My question is, if I operate by rotating my cattle through, so I always have 50 calves, 50 feeders, and 50 fats on the site at a single time, am I supposed to consider these animals all as one unit per Molly's comment if all these animals are going to be leaving my facility at some point in time has a fat steer greater than 1,000 pounds? Correct me if I'm wrong, the rest of the PCA staff, but I would consider that as 50 calves, 50 feeders, and 50 fats, because that's going to be the max that you have on site at any time.
Richard's touching on a little bit of an area that we work on a case-by-case with producers, but I would agree with Molly in stating that if that's what they have capacity for, and that's what each barn is designed for, then I would agree. But if he just has open lots, and he has 50 calves in this one that are grouped, and 50 calves that are grouped, and 50 calves that are grouped, and he's going to bring them all to fats, then I would permit the site for the fats, because then he's covered. Then he's not going to have to worry about, oh, this calves are over 200 pounds, now they're considered, you know, or they're 500 pounds, and now they're considered feeders. So I would have that conversation with the producer to find out what is he really doing, what's happening, and work with him on that permit app. You agree?
I agree.
Anybody else?
Good question. We had another question here. What's the difference between waters of the U.S. and waters of the state? I'm going to let Sam take this one.
And Kim, feel free to pipe in at any point in time.
Okay.
Waters of the state is a much broader definition and incorporates things such as road ditches, intermittent streams, wetlands, everything that there's water flowing. Also groundwater is incorporated in waters of the state. So our definition in Minnesota of waters of the state is very broad. The definition of waters of the United States is more narrow, meaning they're looking at navigable waters or waters utilized for commerce. But please keep in mind that they're still attaching things like tile lines. A tile line could potentially outlet to waters of the United States. most likely it outlets to waters of the United States, that flows to a ditch, that flows to a navigable water. So there's also multiple court cases going at this point in time at the federal level that might impact waters of the United States and what that definition becomes in the future. So it's not perfectly black and white, but waters of the state is very broad, and that's what our rule addresses the majority of the time. Kim, anything else you'd like to add?
No. Good job.
Thank you for that. All right, so that's all I see for questions for now, so I'm gonna get back into this here. All right. As far as the NPDES /FCS permit, it's a combination of federal and state requirements. It provides protection under the Clean Water Act. The current permit will expire on January 31st of 2016. And it's needed when you're proposing a new or expanding an existing facility or to operate an existing feedlot that meets or exceeds that U.S. EPA's large CAFO threshold that we talked about and discharges to waters of the U.S., or if they elect to have coverage. All right. Technical difficulties. There we go. We'll get around it somehow. We'll look at it a little bit. All right. As far as permitting for the NPDES permits, there are two types of NPDES permits, a general and an individual. We'll talk a little bit about the general now, and the individual is on the next slide. Facility size, it meets the U.S. EPA's large CAFO threshold. The purpose of this general permit is for existing facilities or new construction and or expansion of an animal holding area or manure storage area. It requires a 30-day public notice of permit. It's a 5-year permitting cycle, and it's for facilities that do not discharge to waters of the U.S. and or state, and it's protected by the Clean Water Act. Stocking is allowed after the permit is issued, and it must not exceed your permitted animal numbers. Application fee is $620, and there's an annual fee of $345 for this permit. As far as the individual permit goes, the facility size, again, meets that U.S. EPA's large CAFO threshold. The purpose of this permit is for existing facilities or new construction and or expansion of animal holding areas or manure storage areas. Excuse me, this permit coverage is for sites that don't quite meet the criteria of the general NPDES permit for one reason or another. There's several things that could throw you into this category. It requires a 30-day public notice of permit. It's a 5-year permitting cycle again. And as far as discharge goes, if the facility is discharging to waters of the U.S. and or state, and it's protected by the Clean Water Act. As far as stocking goes, after the permit is issued, but again must not exceed the permitted animal numbers. Application fee is $1,860, and there's an annual fee of $1,230. So this is the individual NPDES permit. Sam, I saw a couple questions come in. Should we address them now?
Yep, if you just move the cursor to the tab and click on chat.
Okay. First question, I expect Richard may have been leaning towards the producer's concerns for having to keep records of manure application, because at the 50-50-50 numbers, they would be at 95 AU versus 150 if all animals were considered as one per animal. Sure. Again, very site-specific. You'd have to talk to the producer on those. Good point, though. From Wayne, he had a little clarification there. He said, there are only a few instances of waters of the state not being waters of the U.S. One example is an isolated wetland that does not connect to anything, and the other is groundwater that does not surface somewhere. So thank you for that. All right, permitting, the FCS permit. There's a general or an individual. Construction under these permits may also require a construction stormwater permit, and the FCS permit is not available at this time. Permits are being drafted. More information will be forthcoming. If you have questions about that, we can certainly talk to Kim afterwards, but the main point of this presentation is for the other types of permits that we have covered, since we don't have all the information at this time. All right, so if we're going to look at the differences between the NPDS permit and the SDS permit. Facility size for the NPDS meets that US EPA's large CAFO threshold. The difference is the SDS is for 1,000 AU threshold or storing manure generated by 1,000 AU or more. The purpose of the NPDS is for existing facilities or new construction and or expansion of an animal holding area or manure storage area. And I believe it's exactly the same for the SDS. Public notice for the NPDS, public notice occupants within 5,000 feet of the facility, and a 30-day public notice of permit. And SDS is for public notice occupants within 5,000 feet of the facility. The duration for an NPDS is 5-year, SDS is 10-year. Discharge for the NPDS facility is not discharged to waters of the U.S. and or the state, and you have protections under the Clean Water Act. SDS is for facilities that do not discharge to waters of the U.S. and or state. It does not contain those protections by the Clean Water Act. Stocking is the same for both the NPDS and SDS. Manure management plan is the same for both land application of manure and updated annually along with an annual report. And all of the rest of the plans are required are the same. Air emissions plan, animal mortality plan, operation and maintenance, stormwater plan, and emergency plan are the same for both of those permits. Yes.
Hello, this is Kim Bernaldson with the MPCA. I just wanted to add under the public notice portion that where it says the public notice of occupants within 5,000 feet of the feedlot, that is a notification to the landowners and residents within 5,000 feet of the site. There's no, you just have to let them know that you're doing what you're doing in a form of notification. You're not requesting any response or comment on that, whereas the 30-day public notice of a permit is a request for comments on that permit, and there's a legal procedure to that. So one's a notification, and the other one is a formal notice. That's it.
Thank you for that. Any questions on that so far? Okay.
Our group is quiet here.
Yeah, I think maybe they're afraid I'm going to peg them with a Tootsie Roll. I won't.
She might.
I might. All right, the next thing that we're going to touch on is your permit application and components. Everybody here in the room, you have a packet in front of you if you'd like to follow along with some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. Anyone else out there, they're available on the website if you'd like to bring them up and look at them as we're going through them. All right. Permit application components. We have the animal, feedlot, or manure storage area application. That's your basic application. Along with that, there's an air emissions and odor management plan, emergency response plan, operation and maintenance plan, animal mortality plan, manure management plan and or transferred ownership form, your good neighbor public notice, and your also your construction plans and specifications. Packet is all there. We'll go through a few of them here. That's just a list basically of required. All right. Application process. The MPCA must review your application within 15 business days. The NPDS SDS permits require a 30-day public notice, and we do make great efforts to issue your permit correctly and timely. It's not our it's not something that we would like to do, to have it sitting on our end, on our desks, and not going anywhere. You can see here there's kind of a timeline for the things that happen in the application process, 15 days in the beginning, the 30-day public notice, and then the permit issuance at the end. It's an approximation of how long it may take for your application.
Molly, a comment about that too. Our feedlot program,
I don't mean to brag, and I don't know if Courtney's out there or not. We are pretty awesome on our timeliness. The other state statutes, I think it's 150 days. Our program has always had 60 days for how long has been our limit. The feedlot program, since 2002, we've had to do it in 60 days. And so we are, that's pretty good. And so I just want to point that out when she's talking about timeliness.
All right. So in a minute here, we'll go through some of the pages, but just a few tips for people who are making an application to make sure that it's complete. The best thing that you can do is talk to your MPCA feedlot staff or delegated county staff early on in your process. We can probably help you recognize some of the speed bumps that we commonly see and help work you through them, smooth out the process for you. And if we're aware of what's going on, we can anticipate some things that might come up. So go to the MPCA Feedlot webpage for your application materials. You can download them from online. Make sure you have a complete or update your manure management plan and submit a complete application the first time. Very important. Incomplete applications may be returned. It'll dramatically slow down your permitting process timeline. So there's some of the tips that we kind of noticed. Some other things that might slow it down, the incomplete applications that we were just talking about, not having a complete MMP prior to submittal. If you have to go back and create one of those while you're in the middle of your permitting process, it could be very time consuming. Have complete plans and specifications prepared. Something else that could slow it down is an inadequate good neighbor public notice. If you put it in the paper, something was stated incorrectly, you may have to redo that. Not having the complete plans and specs, or having, plans for the economic and operation side of the project. Basically just having your ducks in a row for where you want to go from here. Something else that could slow it down is the lack of communication, like I was talking about, between all the parties that are involved. If you know what's going to be happening, if you keep us in the loop, we can definitely make sure to try to keep things flowing for you. Also, read all your documents and check and sign where it's necessary. If you just skim over them, you could miss some of the important pieces that are required for submittal. All right, if you guys want to turn to page 5 of the application, which was on the top of the packet that I handed out to the people here in the classroom. This is page 5, the application, and this is one where we commonly see some issues when they're turned in. If you look up at the top, and I'm tall, but I'm not that tall, list the existing numbers that are on site in this category, and your max numbers for after the expansion. So this is for what you have now, and this is for expanding. Number 3 is for existing, number 5 is for what you'll have after expansion, and listing the totals of what you have now and what you will have after the expansion at the bottom there where you can see existing AU and final AU. The numbers that you put on this page have to match with the rest of the application. That's another important one, and another one that we see that comes back and they just don't jive. So that could be something that could throw up a red flag. Yes, Sam?
Maybe you can repeat my question, Brian. But,
Yep.
Is this similar to a construction short form and interim, or would they see in that?
Sam asked if this is similar to what they would see in the construction short form and interim permit. Yes. We're looking at the same form for all of these permits, or the same page here. It should look very familiar to anyone who has had to fill those out before. All right, so this would be page 6. You can see on here, it's kind of small print up there, so I apologize, but at the top, you have numbers for the different components of your site. You could write at the top whether it's new. So the barn that you've always had, number 1, you put it in there. You write as existing, but you're going to add on number 2, you're going to add another barn, so that would be listed as new in number 2. So if you have always had 100 cattle in barn number 1, but now you're going to be expanding to 200 cattle now that you have barn number 2, you will want to first reference that on the page that we just went to with your new versus existing versus new animal units, and then that needs to match with this page. You have to have the same animal unit totals going all the way through your application. It goes through there and it talks about barns and lots, your manure storage basins, that sort of thing, feed silage pads, that sort of a thing. And on the bottom you can see is where you list your animal numbers. Any questions on those pages?
But if you have more than one in these, there's only like 12, right, altogether, 12 numbers in your,
Yeah.
12 components. Yeah.
She asked if you have more than 12 components on your site, what are you supposed to do? You can simply print out another page and keep going on the numbers, just keep them in numerical order. If you have 20 of them, print out a few more pages and just make sure that they match what's on your site sketch that's submitted with your application.
Each number across the top is for each building?
It can be for a building, for a feed pad, anywhere that animals or manure are stored on site. Yep. And there is a site sketch that's required with the application as well, and those need to correlate. The numbers on the site sketch need to correlate with the numbers that are on that page of the application.
This is Kim again. I just wanted to also add that if there's anything that you think isn't really clear because of the way the form is written, that you think we need to know about your site that would make it easier for us to process your permit application, you are welcome to submit, add a letter or a note, or write in the margins any other additional information. For example, if you've got 3 barns and all the manure from those 3 barns go to the same earthen basin, and you have a 4th and 5th barn and they are solid manure areas, so they don't go to the basin, that sort of thing. So, thanks.
Thank you. I'll make sure there went to additional. Okay, I think she took care of that on the chat line. Do we need to read that one out loud, or are we? Sure. Okay. Wayne had added a comment here. It says, regarding the question, if there's a calf pen, a feeder pen, and a fat pen, and the animal leaves their respective pen below the weight considered for the next level, you could count it as 50-50-50. However, if the calf is leaving the pen at 600, it needs to be counted as a feeder, so it would be the 100 to 50, and so on. If they remain in the same building through the entire cycle, if they come in at 100 pounds and leave at 1,200 pounds, stay in the same building or pen for their entire stay, it would be counted as a fat when it leaves. Okay? Good. Thanks, Wayne.
Are there any questions in the audience on that? Because that can be a little confusing. Anybody in here have any questions about that? What we're counting stuff as when we're permitting or registering?
All right, the next one is tips for a complete application, manure management plans. Manure management plans can seem daunting if you're just starting out and you have not done one before, but the fact of the matter is, if you have all your information, the MMP can be written by the applicant. It doesn't have to be done by a consultant or someone else. You can learn how to and do your own manure management plan. There's a planner on our website that can walk you through the different parts of it that are required. If you have questions, our staff are certainly willing and able to help you with that whenever we can. So. Some things to consider before submitting your application. Winter application restrictions, where if you haven't had those before, in general, the winter application restrictions for solid manure, you cannot apply within 300 feet of water and tile intakes during snow melts, if a quarter-inch of rain or more is in the forecast, if you are on slopes that are greater than 6%, unless there's tillage on the contour, or on frozen or snow-covered fields unless approved by the MPCA, or if it's also at phosphorus rates that are not approved by the MPCA. So that's something that you should take into consideration when you're submitting your application. If before you've been able to do winter application and now you need to avoid that, that's a management practice that will need to be taken into consideration. Also, the required 9 months of manure storage. Long-term planning may be required. You can talk to a consultant or review the MPCA's manure management planner on the website. Any questions on that? All right, the last part of the presentation today is other considerations that come with your permit. The environmental review. Project thresholds for environmental assessment worksheets, or EAWs. There are 3 types: a mandatory EAW, where it is required for the project; a discretionary EAW, where it may be done for the project, and where it's exempt, so it may not be done for the project. Mandatory EAWs, the thresholds are construction of a new feedlot with capacity of more than 1,000 AU, expansion of an existing feedlot by 1,000 or more animal units. So if you're at 500 and you expand to 1,500 or more, expanding by 1,000 or more animal units. The construction of a new feedlot by 500 animal units or more in a sensitive location, which we will cover here in a second. And expansion of an existing feedlot by 500 or more animal units in a sensitive location. So, sensitive areas are defined as shoreland, delineated floodplain, designated wild and scenic river districts, delineated WSMAs, which is the drinking water supply management area, or within 1,000 feet of a known sinkhole, cave, resurgent spring, disappearing spring, karst window, blind valley, or dry valley. We don't see a whole lot of those listed at the bottom there on this area, but there are some within the state. If you feel like there could be some around you, make sure to check before. Any questions on that for the mandatory EAW threshold? Yes, Sam.
Just so, we had this question at Detroit Lakes, do you remember that, or when they just clarifying that this was an additional add-on of like 1,000 animals on top of what they already had?
Yep.
And or, you know, brand new growth of 1,000.
Sam's clarification was this is when you are growing by 1,000 or more, or a brand new growth of a facility by 1,000 or more. So there's your clarification. I finally got the anode to took your roll. All right. Other types of EAWs, a discretionary EAW is when a governmental unit with jurisdiction may order the preparation of an EAW for any project that does not exceed the mandatory thresholds and when the project is not exempt. An EAW may be required with a petition that is signed by at least 100 individuals, is submitted before the project has received final approval by the appropriate governmental units, and demonstrates that there may be potential for significant environmental impacts. There's more about that on the next slide. To be exempt for an EAW, the expansion of an existing feedlot by less than 100 AUs and not in a sensitive location, you're exempt from the environmental review, or the construction of a new or expansion of an existing feedlot by 50 AUs regardless of your location, whether you're in a sensitive location or not. Feedlots that are outside of the sensitive areas are exempt when a new feedlot has a capacity of less than 1,000 AUs or the feedlot has a total capacity of less than 1,000 AUs after the expansion, and a county board holds a public meeting for citizen input 10 business days before the feedlot permit is issued, unless another public meeting for citizen input has been held with regard to the feedlot to be permitted. Oops, wrong way. All right, phased action is also something that you need to consider when we're talking about environmental review. Phased action requirements are 2 or more projects to be undertaken by the same proposer that environmentally impact the same geographic area, to be talked about in a minute, and also are undertaken sequentially over a limited period of time. So we need those definitions. A limited period of time is 3 years between the start of construction of one project and the date of application for the next project. So if you're planning 2 projects on site, phased action may be considered a phased action if there's that 3 years in between there. Also, for the same geographic area is determined on a case-by-case basis with the following considerations: potential impacts to air quality, potential impacts to water quality, your land application sites, and your watersheds. So that's something that needs to be looked at, obviously, site by site. Questions on that? I think we're up to date on the chat. Next one. Multi-site permitting. To determine if a feedlot is separate or combined, multiple sites are combined when there's common ownership, the sites adjoin, or the sites use common areas or systems for disposal of waste. That's land application acres or commingling of the manure. I'll talk a little bit more here. Common ownership as defined by 7020 6.0300. The MPCA considers husband and wife as a single owner. MPCA considers minor children as a single and common owner. And also owner means all persons having possession, control, or title to an animal feedlot or manure storage area.
Oh, okay.
All right, moving on. Adjoining production sites. Production sites adjoin if they are within a quarter mile of each other, which is measured from barns, open lots, or storage areas. And also a road, a ditch, that doesn't constitute separation of the production sites. It has to be, you can't say that I have a fence in between feedlot A and B, and therefore they don't adjoin. Common areas or system for land application is duplicate acreages noted on the manure management plan, or commingling in a shared manure handling system. It's not a common system just because the same third party takes the manure out. If you hire the same hauler, it's not considered a common system. Also, not a common system if it's using the same equipment and never mixing the manure sources. If they stay separate, it's considered separate. In conclusion, there are many considerations to make as you expand your operation. Long-term plans for expansion should include future permit requirements if you're planning on expanding, that sort of thing. And MPCA and CFOs can assist you in your planning for your expansion. They can help you navigate the state and federal requirements, and they can help you complete your application. More than happy to help. You just got to ask. And we will be available to answer site-specific questions to anybody who has them. Certainly able to call in and ask us anytime as well. Any questions on the permitting presentation? Everybody still awake? Yes?
On the animal units, do they have,
Sorry. Come on up here. So everybody online can hear as well, just in case somebody else has the same question. Go ahead.
On the animal units, can they divide by 1,000 pounds, or do they have to use the table numbers?
If it is a type of animal that we have listed, they should use the numbers that we have provided.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's something that's not on there, an uncommon type or species of animal, we can help them come up with an animal unit factor for them.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else for now? Let me check the chat here. I think that's all the questions.
Molly, maybe you want to touch on, I know you didn't have it in your slides, about like a county CUP process. How does that come into play with MPCA permitting?
Were you just going to do that? Go ahead.
Ed, we must have paid you beforehand, because that's beautiful timing. I was going to ask, you got a sucker. I was going to ask our county feedlot officers that are here to maybe step up to the mic and introduce, or say who you are, and let us know if you have CUP requirements, if you have any additional information that you'd like to share with the producers online or the producers here. So.
No, I can start.
You can start, Ed.
All of these would be in addition to our permits. This is something Ed had a very good point, that we did not list those individual county requirements. So.
Yeah, so for like Todd County, county requirement is that at 500 animal units, we need a CUP process in the county arena. So that tends to take about 60 days to 90 days to get also in the mix with getting your MPCA permitting.
Samantha, something that we've been talking about a little bit, maybe I should address, maybe this will kind of ring out around the state. We live in an area where we have guys that are both feeding cattle, have cow calves, and now we're getting down to the questions, and we want to get the answers right and do things right, not walk into problems. If we have a permitted feedlot that's right below, say, an NPDS threshold, guy has a lot of beef cows, we're bringing them home for the winter. What do we need to be doing? The quarter-mile thing kicks in. Is that part of a production? Where do we go with them? And I have been visiting with Samantha, and we're kind of working on that. But is that food for thought on this? Because we're rapidly coming into a time with several of our producers, we got to come up with those answers. So.
Let's answer that question in a second. Why don't you tell us about Polk County, Barry?
Okay. What can I tell you about Polk County, Samantha?
Your CUP requirements, when does CUP requirements
Okay.
kick in?
We kick in and we kind of mirror the state. When you hit 300, we're gonna go, you know, we pretty much mirror, this is where you go for a permit with the state, and this is where you go for CUP with the county. So we pretty much mirror that, so it's an easy process. If you're gonna start a feedlot over 300, that's where you end the registration with the state at $299 per se, and we actually would do the permit, CUP. Okay?
Okay. And to address your question, Barry, I don't know if I can address that concisely. That might roll into our next PowerPoint we're going to talk about a little bit with pasture and feedlots and that sort of thing. But if you have a feedlot and you're bringing your cows home and you're going to add them to the feedlot, you want to be permitted for those numbers if they're coming into the feedlot. If you have a pasture, and it's true pasture, adjacent to your feedlot, we don't permit pastures. And so that kind of, I don't know if that clearly addresses your question, but if you're going to create a new feedlot somewhere for the cows to come home to, we should probably talk. And that might be a site-specific discussion to be had between either your county feedlot officer, if you're not federally permitted, and or your PCA contact. If you're in an undelegated county, you're going to have a PCA contact doing the work that your county feedlot officer would do in a delegated county. And are you guys familiar with delegated versus undelegated? Does that make sense? Okay. Undelegated means you don't have a county feedlot officer. They are not, the county's not regulating feedlots per se in your county. Delegated means that there is an agreement between the county and the state to regulate the feedlots that are below those CAFO thresholds that we talked about and below 1,000 animal units. And maybe Molly or anybody else can add to that.
I was actually just going to point that out. There was another question.
Another question. Well, we'll maybe let the rest of our counties go and then address that. Amy?
For Wadena County, once you hit 500 animal units, then you need a conditional use permit.
Okay.
In Morrison, we have tiers, so anything, once you hit 300, you need one, and then that goes till 650, and then you need a new one at 650 to 1,000. And from 1,000 up to our max, you need a different one as well.
All right. Well, it looks like, okay, so, well, looks like there's a site-specific question that was posed, and then he's going to talk to his PCA contact, so we won't address that one right now. Is there any other questions in our audience here in Brainerd? You guys have anything else you want to ask about permitting or ask Molly? Start throwing stuff at him. Wake him up. All right, and anybody in WebEx world, if you have any questions that you didn't ask, you can either unmute and ask us, or you can feel free to chat your questions in. Either way is good. Molly, do you have anything else to add?
I think that's all. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact us anytime. Thank you.
One other
Allie?
thing, I guess just because a county isn't delegated doesn't mean they may not have an ordinance in place that would regulate feedlots. So we may not know. At the state level, we're not going to necessarily know what each county, especially if they're not delegated and we don't have that agreement. So I guess if any producers are out there and looking to do anything, please contact your county at the same time. And I always and townships, because they do have the right to have more regulation and we may not be aware.
Thank you, Allie. It's a really good point. And you'll notice in any of the permit applications you fill out for us, either the NPDS or a construction short form or interim, there's a page that's called required notifications. And there's actually a spot that has a notification to the county and to the township. And that notification is important because even in undelegated counties, this is good to kind of a catch-all. So that if your township has additional restrictions, if they have zoning, or if your counties have a zoning but they're not delegated, this is their shot to say, oh, hey, you got to get a building permit, or you got to get a CUP. We have this in our ordinance. So the permit is meant to help remind folks about that as well. All right, moving on. We will close our chat box and we will move on to our next PowerPoint. All right. This next PowerPoint is a little bit more about the pasture versus feedlot, and this is meant to be interactive again with your wonderful little white clickers. If you don't have one, let us know. I think everybody has one available. So this one's a lot more playing with you and discussing things. This isn't so, you know, this is the rule, this is how it plays out. The other thing I wanted to say is if you wanted a copy of the PowerPoint that Molly just did on permitting, we can get that for you for future reference. And or a copy of the recording, we can share that as well. All right, so this one titled it Management, 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 because half the stuff that we talk about with pasture and feedlot is management-based. It's the first thing we learned in animal science, was half of the work you do is management, management, management. So we're going to just cover the quick pasture definition. The pasture definition is found in 2 spots in Minnesota. It's in 7020, which is our state feedlot rule, and it's also in statute. And the statute was recently changed, and 7020 is being changed. If you're not aware of it, you have questions, we can give you information about that later on. So pasture is grass or vegetation for grazing, including pasture utilized during the winter months, vegetative cover maintained during the growing season, and vegetation sufficient to control soil erosion, manure-contaminated runoff. There are some exceptions for additional supplemental feeding, supplemental watering, and or the travel lanes. You know, we all have all seen pastures and they have the travel lane to the water or down here or down there, and those are acceptable areas to be devoid of vegetation. Okay, so this is the fun part. Would someone get the lights? So these pictures are a little easier to see if we can turn down the lights right there. There you go. Oh, well, it's a little dark, but hopefully everybody can see. I think this one has to be something like push them up. There we go. I don't want everybody to fall asleep. We turned off the lights and it got awful dark in here. So the question that we have up, and our WebEx audience, I apologize, you don't get a vote, so you just get to see what our Brainerd office, or what the Brainerd folks vote on, but what would you consider this? A pasture, a feedlot, and this is within the fence line, so don't look outside the fence line there, or you need more information to make a, you know, call. So we got 11, 12 responses coming in. 14, okay, we're almost there. I'm not going to vote. All right. So, and we have 86% calling this a feedlot. Somebody out there, 7%, so that means like one person called it a pasture. What kind of things made you guys think this was a feedlot? What popped into your head? Just say them. You don't have to walk up to the mic or anything.
No vegetative growth.
No vegetative growth. Anybody see manure accumulation on that ground? Yep. So I think this one's pretty easy one to say, yeah, this is a feedlot. Also looking at the type of the cattle too, and maybe what their management is. These pictures are a little like predisposed to make you only see like a sliver, and so you may not have the whole picture or the whole idea. All right. Next one. What would you consider this? Pasture, feedlot, or you need more information? Oops. All right, we got 12 responses in, 13. All right, we're going to close polling. All right, so we got 85% saying feedlot, 8% saying pasture. What kind of things here lead you to think that this is a feedlot? If you were to walk out on site, what would you consider looking at this operation?
Supplemental feeding.
Yep, there's a lot of hay being fed out there, so there's probably not much forage for those animals on the ground, is there? My first thoughts on this is I looked at the trees and the trees were dead, but then I looked across that lake and there's no foliage on those trees either, so I'm like, well, it's probably winter or late fall or something, or early spring. But if we look at the ground too, I don't see anything green or growing. But it could be late in the winter. So I would lean towards feedlots on this one, but I would definitely talk to the producer as well and what his intentions were and what his plans were.
On these pictures, can we assume that the photo dates aren't at all correct, or?
Yes, if there's this March 2009, disregard that, but if there's a photo date in the bottom right-hand corner, that you can use that as information to help you decide what you're looking at. But please note, we don't just step onto a farm and say, yep, that's a feedlot. You know, most of the time, yeah, we have a pretty good idea. It may be a feedlot or there's feedlot conditions, but we do talk to the producer. We do interact and have that discussion.
I could also be wrong, but generally you don't see that type of fencing in a pasture situation.
There's hints in each of these photos to help you lead to some decisions. And I don't know if you guys heard Kim, but she commented on the fencing type and the operation. All right, next one. What would you guys consider this one? A pasture, feedlot, need additional information? Kind of a pretty picture there, not too bad to look at. Or if there's a pasture management person in here, they might have some comments. So we've got about 50, oh, we got one extra person commenting, voting now. All right, oh, we got almost, what's our percentage? 80% say this is a pasture, 7% say it's a feedlot, 13% say they need additional information. When I look here, I see a pasture, probably a overly grazed pasture because we got it nipped down to the buds, you know, it's pretty darn short. They are supplemental feeding, but it's not black. There's not significant manure accumulation, so I would probably go with pasture in this operation. And I would, you know, most of the time encourage them to maybe talk to some technical support if they're looking at doing more intensive grazing or if they want to manage it better or something like that. Question? Comment? All right, this one. What would you consider this one? Pasture, feedlot, need additional information. All right, we're up to 13. Our other two voters aren't voting that voted last time. 14. All right, well, you're 100% the pasture. Good, I agree. This one I think is obviously pasture. We also have a feeder that's mobile in this picture, so you can move it around so we're not seeing significant manure accumulation. That sort of thing is what I would take into consideration looking at this picture. Any other comments on this one? We're getting to some harder ones, don't worry. There'll be some ones that generate a little bit more interest. Okay, what about this one? What would you consider this? Is pasture, feedlot, or you need a little bit more information? So, the date, feel free to look at the date in this one. It's a little tougher. We're going to see some different feedback on this one. And this is what we've actually, about 40% said pasture, 33% said feedlot, and 27% need additional information. I would probably fall in the camp of I would need additional information here because I can't really tell from this picture if that's soybean stubble or if that's just grass really, you know, early in the spring and it's not coming yet. I need to talk to the producer and be on site. Or else, you know, I don't know about you, but that picture is just a little deceiving as to what's on the ground. Any other thoughts on this? Comments? No?
There's not a lot of manure accumulation.
Kim made the comment that there's not a lot of manure accumulation, and I would agree with her. There's a large area fenced, and if you look in the back, there might be a little bit of greening up coming in there. So this is one where I would definitely need to talk with the producer and ask him what his management was, what's going on. I would know more about the farm. Okay. All right, what about this one? We got pasture, feedlot, we need additional information. And this PowerPoint is meant more to help you kind of see what we see and what we're looking at when we're coming onto a farm and we're looking at pasture conditions versus feedlot conditions. Help us maybe have the same perspective when we're looking at stuff. So we're up to 12, 13, 14. All right. Okay, 71% say pasture, 7% say feedlot, need additional information. I would probably err on the side of the pasture. This facility looks like a small operation, some Herefords out there, a little supplemental feeding, but there's good grass growth. It doesn't appear to be black or have manure accumulation. Unless you look this way and the entire area is blackened, you know, we're just seeing a sliver of a facility or an operation in the photos. I got accused of, what did he call me? I stacked the photos. And I said, yeah, I did. I kind of did it on purpose to get people to think a little bit about it. All right, what about this one? These are getting better, a little more interesting. Pasture, feedlot, or you need more information. There's a date. The date is backwards on this one. It's actually May 17th. That camera put the dates in funky for whatever reason. So, well, I got about 10 responses in. What are you guys seeing looking at this picture? Feel free, WebEx folks, to pipe in too if you have comments. No chats, everybody's being quiet out there. All right.
I'll make a comment, Sam. I think
Go ahead, Barry.
I think that is the wintering area of obviously a pasture operation. That's the corner by the building sites. You can see the travel lanes. That's part of a pasture operation where they winter.
And actually, Barry's right with this facility. This is actually part of a very large pasture area. So the things here that we would take into consideration is the area around these feeders is much larger than supplemental feeding devoid of vegetation. This area, I would look to make sure that this isn't a pollution hazard, because that's the other thing with pastures, is if you have a really poor pasture, you still can't cause a pollution hazard off of the pasture and discharge to waters of the state, you know, if you're adding pollutants to waters of the state. So this area happens to be surrounded by, you know, I don't know, 300 acres of grass. And there's really no surface water for it to discharge to. I only know that because I took this picture, was part of the inspection at this facility. So we would look at that area and evaluate it for potential runoff or potential impact. But I would say the area surrounding the feeders would be feedlot, area outside would be pasture. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? Any comments on that? Thoughts on this one? This one's a little less black and white. There's a little piece here and a little piece there that we have to look at.
One of the things we remind our pasture operators of, Samantha, especially the ones who have a large amount of cattle, is to be a pasture operator, we need to winter in areas where we're not going to create feedlot conditions that discharge. And that way you remain that pasture operation. And it's just something we've been working with our guys on because we've had several problems with it. And everybody understands it and it's going quite well. We've done some relocating.
Okay. So I don't know if everybody else there in WebEx world heard what Barry had to say, but it was a good point, is that if you have a pasture operator, you've got a cow-calf guy, and he's wintering in a location, and he probably is going to create feedlot conditions if he continues to keep them in one spot and feed in that one spot and not move his feeders around. Is that spot okay to create a feedlot? And does he need a permit to create a feedlot? That's the other thing that I would ask, too. I mean, does he have 350 head of cows that he's going to put in the spot and create a feedlot through the winter? Then we should probably talk and see if a permit's needed to create a feedlot there.
Another consideration too is if that producer intends, I'm sorry, Sam, you can make me walk.
I'm sorry, Kim. I should have made Barry walk too. I don't know if everybody heard Barry.
You like Barry better.
No. I like you equally.
Something else I would, if I was looking at this site, I would do is have the producer, if they will be wintering their cattle there again this next year, and what they're going to do to get it ready or clean anything up or move the feeders, or what action they're going to take between now and next winter to get this site ready to winter on again.
That's a good question, because one of the things that we would take into consideration is nutrient buildup. If you're doing it in the same spot over and over and over, are you having a buildup of nitrogen and phosphorus due to the manure that's there? Are you removing the manure? Do you want to revegetate that? with a grass to kind of use up some of those nutrients off of that soil. Those are questions and conversations that we would have with the producer. All right, next one. What would you consider this one? Pasture, feedlot, need additional information? This one's a little trickier. We had some good discussion in Detroit Lakes on this one. I found the discussion rather fascinating on people's perspective of this photo. And like, again, I don't know if we've said this yet, but these are a snapshot in time that, you know, we get that one little blurb that we're looking at. We don't get to see before or after. And a lot of times our compliance, too, we are out there and it's a compliance indicator for that one inspection or that one time that we're on a facility. All right, so we got 43% say pasture, 14% say feedlot, another 43% need additional information. I would definitely sit with the 43% that said need additional information, because this picture is a little deceiving. Part of the discussion that we had last time was the growth on the grass in the front. You can see there's significant growth on this grass. It's headed out, and down there it looks, you know, in the picture, it looks black or it looks impacted. There's a calf structure most likely in that area. There's some feeders. I don't know if they've been moved. I don't know if that's just late growth. They had them out there, they calved late in the spring. So I would definitely need to talk to the producer about his management at this site and what happened, what's going on. Looks like there might be a little drainage way too running through there that I would be curious to see, you know, what impacts or anything like that that might happen. Anybody else have thoughts on this one? Observations, what they think this is? Anybody disagree with me completely and think it's a feedlot? Nobody's willing to get up and disagree with me completely.
It almost looks like that could be from an intensive grazing operation as well, where they graze their way down, and that's the aftermath, and you're going to get results as well. The layer they got across there.
And if you
grazing it hard, it might look that way early in the year before it gets results.
And if you guys didn't hear his comment, he said it looks like it might be an intensive grazing operation. If you see the wire in the front, he's looking at different hints in this picture to let us know maybe what we're looking at. And they grazed it way down, and that's kind of the remainder of what's left. And the other thing that I looked at in this photo that a producer pointed out to me the first time I gave this talk is the trees are alive, and the trees are budded out. And if this was a regular feedlot area where they were pounding that ground, I highly doubt that those trees would be looking that good over a period of time. We know what happens when cattle get up on trees. They tend to kill them most of the time. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right, let's just take a second here. Oh, we got a chat. Let's see. They're having a little discussion about the 45-day rule. That's kind of a little bit of CAFO stuff I think you might be talking about there. So this one is an interesting one. This one's a little tougher to see. And again, the same question, pasture feedlot, we need more information. And feel free to use the clues. It's August 3rd, 2010 when this photo was taken. What you think of this area, what you consider it. These are fun. You guys are so quiet, though. You should hand me the candy. I'm just going to randomly throw it at someone.
That's a congregation area of a pasture operation.
I have to walk you.
Come on. Come on, Barry.
It looks like an obvious pasture operation, and these cattle are congregating in this area, and the vegetation is disappearing, obviously, for comfort or water, whatever. That's a congregation area, but that's a pasture operation.
Okay. And so we've got the answers in. We've got 36% say it's pasture, 21 say it's feedlot, and 43 say they need additional information. And this is another one of those to generate a little bit more discussion. I picked a tougher photo to see. You can see in the back here on the right, you can see there's quite a bit of grass if you gauge it by how tall those cattle are, where their legs are. But this area kind of got turned into a feedlot area up on the top where the bunkers were, because the bunkers weren't able to be moved, and so this is kind of what happened over a period of time. So you do have a joint feedlot pasture mix going on.
Okay, you have to understand that this is the third time I've been through this talk since last week. So one of the observations I've made after seeing this photo for a few times is that all the cattle appear to be kind of walking in the same direction, even those in the center left-hand side of the pictures seem to be coming towards this direction. They all seem to be going in one direction. So I said I need additional information because it could be a walking lane. And that in 2010 was kind of a wet year, as I recall. So there's some other factors that I would need more information about.
Well, and I hope what this is showing to our internet audience and our Brainerd audience is that we really do try to gather all the information, and we really do make a concerted effort to talk to our producers that we're working with to understand how they're managing their facilities and how they're managing their feedlots and pasture areas, and help them to permit as such. You know, the stuff that you hear about that isn't always positive is kind of when other scenarios are taking place. All right, this one, what would you consider this one? This one's a little different. Same question though, pasture feedlots, or you need additional information. There's no date on this one, but we can kind of gauge the time of year by what we're looking at. Also, we see some protein tubs probably. Oops, uh-oh, sorry guys. You're gonna have to vote. Let me reopen this for a second. Just messing with you a little bit. We're going to re-poll the question. There you go. You get a vote again. Sorry about that. I got a little happy on the forward button. All right, we're at 14 responses. 93% say pasture, 7% say feedlot. And this is one of the scenarios where it looks like we're utilizing the forage. In this picture, a good thing for me that I see is the cattle are out there utilizing this forage source. They're out there, it looks like a combine cornfield to me. They're out there, they're actively foraging. There's still vegetation on the ground. There is some supplemental feeding, but not significant quantities, just a protein lift, because you know that corn stuff, you're looking at mostly fiber. ADF, NDF, and a feed stuff like that. So you got to add some protein and some mineral, of course, to a ration when you're dealing with this. But I would agree, pasture. Anybody disagree or have comments that they'd like to share with the group? Barry, you look like something's on your mind.
Never seen that before in my life.
Oh, all right. So, looks like we agree for the most part. They're starting to get some manure accumulation, and I think the thing that I point out here is this is a single photo in time and space, you know. And 2 weeks later, if those cattle are in the same area and 2 or 3 weeks have gone by, this is going to probably look a little bit different. So this is definitely about management. Are they utilizing the forage available? How long are we leaving them? Are there sensitive features adjacent to this field? All of those things would come into play. All right, what about this one? What would you consider this one? Same question, a little similar scenario, but still good fodder for discussion, and or at least question answers for everybody to use their clickers. All right, we got 93% saying pasture, 7% saying need additional information. And again, I would agree, they're utilizing a forage source. The cattle are out actively foraging, and there's still material for them to be eating. There's still vegetation there. Whether or not there will be in a month, you know, that's a management decision. How long is there a forage for them to seek? All right, any other questions? Thoughts similar to the previous slide? All right, so we're kind of done with the clickers, so thank you for your humor and your input with answering our questions on these photos. Some of the considerations and reasons why we look at the things we look at is when you start developing feedlot conditions, we're going to be seeing more soil erosion because there's nothing to hold it in there. Did anybody go to the Crow Wing Forage Council meeting that they had not long ago? He had this really awesome rain simulator that I thought was super interesting. I think it was from NRCS. It was your pasture grazing. Oh, Amy was there. Yeah, you were there. It was really neat because he simulated rainfall in all these different soil types. And I think there's bare soil, there's pasture, poor pasture, there was good pasture, and you got to see how much infiltrated and how much ran off. And that was really interesting because like the bare field, the volume of water that came off of that, along with the soil, there's a lot of soil that came off of that field that was lost. It's kind of some of the stuff we're looking at when we talk about soil erosion and potential runoff off of bare ground. Over application of manure, when you have cattle out there, they are spreading your manure for you on that field, which is one of the benefits of pasturing, correct? So we want to look at, if you are congregating large quantities of cattle in one area, that manure is going to be utilized and that you're not over-applying nutrients. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potash. So we look at phosphorus buildup and also potential runoff to surface water. Is there a lake adjacent to the area where you're wintering your cattle or pasturing your cattle for the winter? Also, like I said before, pasture cannot create a pollution hazard. So if we have a really poor pasture, what I'm saying is that say you have a poor pasture leading up to a lake on a slope and it's devegetated that whole slope. And we get a rain event and you discharge to that lake. That's still a discharge even though it came off a pasture. And so that's not something we're going to run out typically and sample right away, but that is a potential to see if it is discharging. We'd rather just encourage you to, increase your vegetation, better manage that pasture area, because it also increases your volume of forage for your cattle, which is a good thing. Wintertime feeding, and this is what we talked a little bit about before when Barry came up. We said, cannot create a feedlot during the winter without obtaining your proper feedlot permit, so dependent upon your size. But the other thing is you can pasture cattle during the winter without creating a feedlot. And so we do have a fact sheet on this, and I'm not sure if it's up here. Do we have that fact sheet up here? I think we do. I don't know if you guys got this or not. And those of you on the WebEx, the title to the fact sheet that I'm holding up is Managing Livestock, Feeding on Pasture and Crop Residue. And I like the pictures on the back of this fact sheet. They show an area that was fed on throughout the winter. You can see the cattle. And you can see that when the vegetation starts to grow in the spring, the vegetation also starts to grow in that pasture again. It comes back. And so they didn't destroy their pasture. All right, grazing management practices. Basically, we want you, avoid locating in sensitive areas. A lot of the things that we see with pastures is adjacent to streams and creeks. And if you're utilizing it as a water source, considering fencing it out and narrowing your access. Consider pumping out of a lake into a stock tank. A lot of these other BMPs that can be utilized to reduce your impact to those sensitive areas such as streams, creeks, lakes, rivers, all of that. So there's some things that can be done to reduce your impact. Following appropriate stocking density. And stocking density, I think, is really related to your management of that area. I mean, if you're heavily managing and you're intensively rotating grazing area, your stocking density probably could be a little higher than someone who's not managing for those things. So it's very dependent upon the facility and your practices. Prevent formation of manure packs. Moving feeding equipment during the winter is beneficial, so all that impact isn't on one area. Matching your nutrient needs with the crops that you're going to potentially place in that field. So if you're utilizing a field that had combine corn and they're foraging in it and you have manure application occurring, taking that into consideration with whatever other nutrients needs you might be putting on that field. You're managing to increase your forage production. More forage is not a bad thing for pasture. And then managing to prevent feedlot conditions unless you're going to go through the process and obtain a feedlot permit, or you're going to make sure that the feedlot that you do create isn't a pollution hazard by working with us, talking with NRCS. Sometimes they can do min farms and other support models to help you determine if it's a problem. Sometimes not. It's dependent upon the county and the staff and their availability. There's some resources out there. This is just listing one, NRCS range and pasture manual is out there. It's a very good document, but there's definitely more from your local land-grant universities, University of Minnesota, Ohio State, Iowa. There's a lot of good information out there. Carrying capacity, this is just talking about that stocking density again. Maximum stocking rate possible without the long-term damage to that vegetation, so that comes back. One thing that we're looking at is when the growing season starts, not when row crops go in. There's a difference there between those two things, because the growing season, that grass starts growing before row crops go in. And then also rate may vary from year to year according to your forage production. Manure does not exceed, again, we're looking at what's going on that land and what's being taken off of it as far as nutrients go. More information, I just have the same location. If you'd like the address, feel free, we can get it to you afterwards. Any questions about this stuff? Pasture, feedlot? You don't have to come up to the mic. I can repeat it if you don't feel comfortable doing that. And chat questions, WebExers, feel free to chat in questions at this time. If not, we're actually done a little bit early with our actual presentations, though we will be available for discussion and comment afterwards to talk to the staff or the county feedlot officers that are in the room. And all right, well, we'll keep the chat up. If anybody wants to chat in a question, please feel free to do so. All right, thank you very much for your time, and we'll hang out and visit with you now for a little while.
I had one question in regards to your corn stalks, when your cow-calf guys bring them in for the winter, wintering cows there.
Yep.
You make a comment of going from pasture to a permanent feedlot.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed ambiguous at what point.
Does that happen?
Yeah, how does a guy that's always done that, they may bring tires out there and move those tires, but density numbers and that, is there something in a handout you guys have or a bulletin, give some guidelines to producers so they can better manage it to meet that pasture criteria?
Well, and to repeat your question, he was talking about the transition from when it goes to pasture and like a setting where you're utilizing row crop forage, like a combine cornfield. And when does that happen? When does it transition from a pasture to a feedlot, and versus putting in a permanent feedlot setting, how to figure out when that occurs and how to manage that within the rules. The best document that we have is the fact sheet, managing livestock feeding on pasture and crop residue. That's the first place I would say, just to give you a little better idea of what we're looking at and what we're taking into consideration. And for the guys who have always done that, the things that I would recommend is, first of all, look where you're doing it. Look to ensure that the location of that is not in a sensitive area, it's not on slopes, it's in a fairly good location, because you are probably going to create feedlot conditions. The question is that feedlot going to create a pollution hazard? And so those are the things that if you talk to us up front about that kind of stuff and ask us if you're concerned, we can have that conversation with you and look at the site and talk to you about what you're doing. Maybe even run a min-farm model on it to make sure that you're not going to be non-compliant. Min-farm is a model that we utilize to determine potential feedlot runoff based on animal numbers, how often you're cleaning the lot, potential sources where the runoff can go, and we can help you decide if that's a good location or not.
That just seems to be a concern with a lot of cattlemen in the state that, with the changing regulations, that now all of a sudden we have to get permits for cows.
Well, and this goes to where the whole term winter feeding. We do, I like to either call it pasture or feedlot. If you're going to create a feedlot, let's make sure that it's not a pollution hazard, that your numbers are such in your time frame. That's the other thing, is if you have over 1,000 head, let's say that you're a big operator, you've got 1,000 head, you're going to winter them in this cornfield, and you're going to create a feedlot. You're going to trigger some other permit requirements. And that's the kind of thing that we want to talk to you about ahead of time to see about potential management or potential permitting needs, and have that conversation with the producer. We're not saying that some things are not possible, but we also want to make sure that we're working within the rule and within the statute for what the cattleman needs to do to operate his facility. And when I love the statement in the permitting PowerPoint that says to help you navigate through the state and federal requirements. That's part of our job. And so, you know, we take that seriously where we're able to have that conversation with the producer. And this PowerPoint was meant to show that it's not always black and white. And so that's why I really still like to keep it clear with pasture and feedlot. What are you going to create? How long are they going to be there? What are the potential pollution hazards or impacts? And how does that fit into the rule and the statute?
I'll add to that, Sam, that there's never two sites that are the same. That's why you pointing it out too, that, you know, you really do need to talk to either your county or state. No two sites there ever have a straight black or, it's never black and white. So you got to work with your regional staff.
Well, and that's why this publication was developed, was to help explain when that point, when you turn from pasture to feedlot. And then, of course, what then does that mean to the producer if they do have a winter feedlot that they're using for the cattle. And if they want to manage it as a feedlot, let's manage it as a feedlot. If they want to try to manage it as pasture and maintain vegetation below by moving the feeders, by doing that sort of stuff, or if they want to spread the manure during winter, where are they doing that? And is it a problem? Because having cows spread manure isn't such a bad thing because it's a lot less mechanical upkeep and that sort of thing. So that's what we try to do with our producers. Any other questions?
No, just maybe another comment too on residue grazing is that even in Todd County, we're getting a lot more of these cattle intakes. We still need to maintain a setback on those, so if they're in the middle of the field that we're just letting the cattle run to, we have to kind of know, do we have to fence that out? Or do we have to, you know, where does the cattle go? Where does the runoff go in the spring?
And I don't know if you guys out in WebEx heard Ed's comment. Maybe he would repeat it again at the mic for me.
You can do it.
Well, I want to say it correctly. You were talking about potentially fencing out areas in a field if they were going to utilize that during the winter months for cattle, if it had a sensitive location or if there's potential runoff from an area, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There is a chat comment in that where Mike was talking about the 45-day rule, and he said, Samantha, I thought that the 45-day rule was that if you confine animals for 45 days or more in one area with accumulation of manure, that can be classified as a feedlot. You had mentioned CAFO rules. I did not think this only pertained to CAFOs. The 45-day rule, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Kim or Wayne, if you're on there, does come from the Code of Federal Regulations, which means that if you had over 1,000 head of cattle and you confined them in one area creating a feedlot condition for more than 45 days, you are considered a feedlot requiring, well, historically requiring an NPDES permit to do so. So that 45 days does come from the federal regulations. That's the generation, or the point where that came from for our WebExers. Any other comments or questions? This is a good discussion. Put me on the spot.
Samantha, I'll share a few things that we've worked with.
Okay, go for it,
Getting back to what Ed said, Ed and I both come from an area where a considerable amount of crop farming and grazing, and you get those things where you're going to use the land a little bit more that way in our part of the state. Some of the numbers we've looked at is when you go to grazing from late fall when the guys get the crops out on into close to spring, 3 to 4 head per acre is going to put on the amount of manure on that piece of ground. If you're calculating it by the acreage, you'll find it if you do the calculations. That'll put on all the phosphorus you need. So if you're going to do manure calculations with the farmer and he's saying he wants to do this, you just do the numbers game, and 3 to 4 head per acre will take care of all your phosphorus needs. So if you're going to have into 7 to 10 head per acre, now you're getting into conditions of on very heavy corn residue. If you run them over that extended time, the residue by spring will be getting to a condition of the management of the areas that can discharge. It's going to be subject to risk. And we've seen that time and time again where the heaviest corn residue can be destroyed by spring and have that risk. So the numbers game really comes into play. How many head do you want to put out there and how do we need to approach it? It's case by case. We only have several producers in the state probably that really want to, the lower numbers really are in a different dynamic and don't pose those challenges. But even a 200 or 300 acre field is going to have a big challenge if we have sensitive areas. So management, and as you've said, Samantha, it's all about management.
Yes, much agreed, and I do agree on the case by case too. So, you know, the numbers are nice to give us ballpark figures, but definitely feel free to punch those numbers, figure out your nitrogen, your phosphorus deposition on that field. Dependent upon your ground too. If you're coarse textured, you know, there's a lot of factors that would play into that as well. Anything else? All right, and I see nothing else, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, so you're no longer being recorded. Now you